Vogel, Representative Muller, Member Matson, Member Kammer, Member Robertus, and Vice Chair Evans. So happy to have this meeting on today. And so we can start roll call.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Ms. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Kammer?
Present.
Ms. Matson?
Here.
Representative Muller?
Here.
Ms. Robertus?
Here.
And Ms. Williamson?
Here.
All right, Madam Chair, 6 of the 6 members are present. A quorum is present.
Fantastic. All right, and just to get started, Miss Emily Hussein, I always wonder if I'm saying your name right or wrong, so my apologies.
You're saying it correctly, Madam Chair.
I am saying it. Okay.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Please, if you don't mind, just want to give you space if there's anything you want to say initially, and we'll most likely get back to you as we start.
I can give you an update on the 4th data set. We anticipate being able to get that to you the week of the 14th of March, so a couple weeks.
All right. And that data set, are you able to give us a little more information about what will be included with that?
If you just give me a second, Madam Chair, I meant to look that up before.
No problem. I was actually going to have you do updates, so this is great. We're actually just going to go into our minutes.
Okay. Great.
Just to see if anyone has any correction that needs to be made before we adopt them forward. And hearing none, we can adopt the minutes. Mr. Vogel. All right, I'm actually pulling up our agenda now here, so. So yes, we'll do our adoption of the previous meeting minutes. Okay, now we'll go into our DHS provided data and other data topics, but Ms. Hussein, if you could please continue with what the update you were giving.
Yes, Madam Chair. I was going to pull up a slide from the presentation that Dawn Davis gave, where she sort of laid out the 4 anticipated data reports, and we're on the final one, just to make sure that I get an accurate. So just give me a second, I'll pull that up, hopefully I can find it quickly. But you should have all received the 3rd data set a couple of weeks ago, or last week.
Yes, if anyone has not, please. I believe we all have.
Great, thank you.
And Madam Chair, Ms. Hussein, I actually have a copy of Ms. Davis's presentation up on my screen. If you'd like, I could share
great.
it with a specific slide.
Please
Thank
do.
Thank you. I just found it too. So.
Which slide would you like me to display, Ms. Hussein?
It is the next slide.
All right. Yes.
So one. That's the overview 4, which will delve into the county determinations with requests for reconsideration by outcome. So you'll get all the pieces of data sort of in the boxes underneath by race, ethnicity, and gender, with the same categories as in previous reports. So as I said, that should be, we anticipate the week of the 14th, and I can provide Mr. Vogel with any updates on that timeline.
All right, thank you so much. So we will go ahead and open up the discussion. Members, so anything that we want to look into the 3rd data set here, we want to just discuss anything that kind of sticks out to you all. I know personally, well, before I say this, Ms. Cassane, I know we did put in a written request for a member of your data team to be able to be present, just to give us a interpretation of the data that we've received. And so as you find out more information is when that can happen, that would be so greatly appreciated.
Yes, Madam Chair. It may interject one quick update. The fourth data report will also indicate by provider type, in addition to race, ethnicity, and gender. So as in the previous report, you'll see data by provider type. So it will be quite a bit more detail.
That's great. Thank you so much.
And I will be happy to provide an update on your request for a present. Would you like a presentation, or would you like to have someone available for questions, or what would be?
I would like a presentation. That would be great.
And sort of what would the scope of it be? Covering one of the reports, or?
So the presentation, and members, please just speak freely. The presentation, just more so being able to, I would say, just the interpretation of what the data is saying, what DHS is doing in regards to the interpretation, what would need to be, what would be helpful for the department to be able to utilize in regards to a response to the data.
Yeah. I think for us, like, to just hear, like, what do you all find like interesting? What is you guys pulled this data, here it is. The first couple of presentations that you guys did was like, here's the data, here's how many disqualifications were done. You guys gave us the data as a whole and gave us the information that you felt like was important. And so, and that was great for us. We used some of that data in our report. And then now, this third data set that you gave us, like, I feel like I'm getting fed with a fire hose now. Right. And then, and so we want to know what you all think is important, and then, other stuff that we can pull from it is great. And so it just would be nice, as far as the scope, what do you think is what are the highlights? What are the high points of the data that you're giving us? Because like this third data set, I look at it and, I can look at it and see what I think is important. But I mean, it's just so much, So.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I will take it back to our team and we'll figure out and consult with Mr. Vogel if he's amenable to that. So, and Chair Williams as well.
Greatly appreciate it. Member Robertus.
I'm speaking for myself here, so I'm just gonna say it. I think it would really be awesome to feel like we are working with DHS in creating the solution. So even like the last meeting where I did vote not in favor of something, it just felt, because I primarily did that because I felt like we weren't on the same page as DHS, right? That the committee had written a great report, which was great, and then it just didn't feel like we were jiving. And I think for me, in order for this to feel successful, is to have DHS and a partner in the process. So I would love to hear from you guys about when we get these data reports or have some of these questions, what you guys as a unit think also needs some areas of improvement, because we all work in at Department of Corrections. There's lots of things that we could do better at or need change, but is not within my control to do so. So if there's things that you and your team also need as it relates to I think I'm making my point, but I would just love to feel like a little bit more like a partnership in this with DHS, certainly to help you guys as well. Just a thought, and I'm from another state agency, so I feel like it's a little odd because usually when we're on committees, there's a seat for that department where it's heavily influenced, and so they have a voice there present. This is just structured a little bit different than I'm used to. Is there a DHS member that sits?
Yep, Kulani. Yep,
Oh,
she's
okay.
on the main task force. Yep.
Okay. But anyways, that's just my 2 cents.
That's a
Thank
great
you.
tweet.
Yeah. I'll take it back to our team and we'll have some conversations and continue getting what you need. I appreciate it.
Yes, great. There's a Jill that's here. I'm just not exactly sure.
I'd be happy to introduce Jill. If Jill would like to say more. I had discussed with Chairperson Williamson having one of my students participate in the meetings with me, just for an opportunity for growth and development, and join in with me as I look through the data. So this is Jill Selstrom. She is one of our students at Minnesota State Mankato. She is the president of our Students for Alcohol and Drug Education group, and so she's just been fantastic. We got to meet yesterday and look through some of the data together, and I know she's been looking through the videos and such like that, and is very, very interested in this topic. So Jill, would you be willing to say a few more words about you? I don't want to.
Absolutely.
Go for it. You take it away.
So yeah, like Dr. Kammer said, I am a current senior at Minnesota State University Mankato in the Alcohol and Drug Studies program, minoring in corrections. So I also have a connection to the background study issue because I have an issue with my background due to my criminal past, and I've been in recovery now for 12 years. So yeah, I just see the need for this type of reform, and so I want to be a part of it. And I got that opportunity and I didn't want to pass it up. So here I am.
Thank you so much, Jill, for being here. I wanted to make sure you were acknowledged. And thank you so much, Member Kammer, for the invitation for Jill and the work that you're both doing together. So thank you. Thank you. All right. So in this discussion in regards to data set 3, I really don't want to speak too much about what my initial feelings were, and just in regards to my area expertise and seeing the numbers, and because I don't want to become emotional, and I want us to stick to the facts and resolve. So with this discussion, just want to see what other members have to say, or anything just to kind of make mention about any questions that we want to provide for DHS. Please, Member Kammer.
Yeah, so let's see. Vice Chair Williams and I had a really quick conversation one day, and this popped up. Ms. Kassane, I'm just curious, would you have the gender breakdown for the total N, so that the total distinct count of, I think, determinations made? Because I think, one of the questions that was popping into our minds was, it'd be great to see, how this plays out for gender, and we've only got the gender breakdown for actual disqualifications, if I recall. So if we're just wondering how accessible the gender breakdown is for the N, so that we could look at a comparison else otherwise. And I didn't know if that's something you had, or if that's something that would have to be manually still calculated, or how much work that would take. Do you know offhand? Oh, Ms. Kassane, are you still there? Maybe we may have lost you. Oh, there you are.
I apologize. I got an emergency phone call, so I just missed like the last 3 minutes or 4 minutes.
All good. All good. Hey, One of the questions I had is in this data set 3, so we had gender breakdown for the disqualifications. Do you know if DHS already has the gender breakdown for the total? I think it would be total determinations is what we're looking for. So we could look at disqualifications versus determinations, because I don't think we've gotten gender breakdown for determinations, only disqualifications. And just to be able to compare, I think we'd need the gender breakdown for the end that this came from. So I don't know if that's something you have or if it would require a lot more work. Any initial thoughts on that? Because I don't want to keep asking for additional things if it requires a lot of work. So
Yeah.
No,
So I think
Mr.
the
Kemp.
question is, we would like the determination by gender only if you have it. We're not making an additional request if it's going to take a long time to get it back. But if you have it, we would like it.
Member Cameron Evans, yes, we can get that. I just got a message from someone on our data team that we are going to, that was inadvertent, and we will be revising the reports to add that. So that's not a problem. I'm sorry about my phone call.
Oh, no worries,
those
no worries.
things.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Righty here. So I wanted to just make sure, and please, if you don't have anything to add, I don't want anyone to feel put on the spot, but I really respect and value the expertise that is in this, a part of this subcommittee. So Member Matt.
I have some stuff, Tashonda, 100%. I have some stuff, Madam Chair. So I was just going to let Roy, I know you had some, did you have any charts or anything that you wanted to go over, or?
I didn't plan a formal presentation. I will have some, I have some not beautiful charts that I could show you, just as Jill helped me out yesterday, and as we were asking a couple questions. So I haven't sent these to Will. I have not had anything done with these, but I could certainly send them to Will afterward, because I think we need to, but I can share my screen and just show you a couple questions that, I was curious about.
I have a couple things too I want to just highlight. So
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll just share right here for a moment, just to show you. So, what we're looking at here is that distinct count of disqualifying crimes and conduct by disposition type, years disqualifying, and years, all genders from 2018 to 2019. So one of my questions was, just research question in my head, was from 2018 to 2019, we had a big increase in numbers overall. So I was just really curious to see if that had any impact on disposition type. And as you can see here, the numbers held fairly consistent from 2018 to 2019. So we weren't seeing a big increase, in the number of POE considerations or anything like that. They held pretty true. So that was my big takeaway. Sometimes when I just look at the numbers on a sheet, I go, I wonder. So it's helpful just to take a look at percentages as well. So this is just looking at 2018 to 2019. This is, again, all genders, and things look fairly consistent. One of the things I also threw together, just out of curiosity here, since this is really the first time we've gotten to take a look at gender, is I've got two slides here. One is just 2018, so these are the 2018 numbers. Just looking at how dramatically different are the dispositions for males versus females. And what you can see is we have a smaller number of males here. So 4,490, we've got 8,099 females. So I was just really curious, to take a look and see where the big differences are. Probably, the bigger differences that I see here is for males in 2018, you see about 3% maltreatment and 10% preponderance of evidence. And for females, you see about 10% in 2018 were maltreatment, and only 4% were preponderance of the evidence. So just seeing a bit of a difference there between the genders in 2018. And again, these are only 2018. So also took a look at 2019 2019, this does the same thing. This is just the 2019 numbers. So again, just looking overall here, for convicted as being the disposition type here, for males, 71%, you can see females 63%. So that tells us there's got to be a little bit of a difference somewhere else here. So for males in 2019, 5% maltreatment, and for females, 11% maltreatment. So we see some similarity there. But for the POE, fairly consistent percent-wise for males and females in 2019, 3% and 4%. So nothing particularly huge there. So those were the primary things I took a look at. I was just curious just to see, is there a big difference, in those dispositions by gender? And then also wanted to see if there's a big difference in dispositions just from an increased number perspective, because we heard about those changes from 2018 to 2019. So those were just the simple charts we threw together. So I'll turn it back over to whoever else. Hopefully that's interesting to you too. I just like to see things visually sometimes.
Definitely.
The charts are so helpful to digest the data because it's so overwhelming. So bring on the charts. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Mueller, did you have something?
I do, and I didn't see this in the report, but maybe I missed it. What do they mean by admission?
Would our DHS person be able to answer this? This is a great question, because I'll tell you, Jill and I, when we were crunching numbers, that we went kind of on a chase to try to search it out. And I know it's got to be there somewhere, but if someone has a quick definition spot, that would be helpful.
It's at the bottom of, it's at the very end of the report they gave us. There's definitions there, and I don't have it up. But it's at the very end of what they gave us is all the definitions. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it's got the definitions, but I mean, I see item 10 for disposition, it lists them, but we don't see the definitions for Alford plea and all of those. So those definitions might be helpful.
Yeah.
As well. Because we were going into statute, looking and such.
Yeah, and I'll just say, from my experience as a prosecutor, a conviction would, in that world, would mean both after trial and with a guilty plea. And so I didn't know if admission meant to sort of separate out guilty pleas versus a conviction after trial. I just didn't know, or if there was some other kind of admission that I wasn't quite tracking.
Yep, it's a lot. Like they admitted to it, but didn't get convicted of it. Or if it's something in the civil system where it's not a criminal thing, it's in child protection or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I was wondering about was trying to figure out those cases where there might be like multiple disqualifiers. And so if you had something related to substance abuse, like a controlled substance offense. But then I noticed theft was awfully high too. And I was curious about, the cases, especially with theft, if there was, where the individuals maybe had some controlled substance in the background too. So I don't know if there was a way that was parsed out or not.
Well, I just have a couple. I'm going to share my screen too and just show folks. Go on, you guys. Go. No, go get the scroll. Go. Goodbye. So there's I just took the time to highlight, and this is just because it's my area, right? That I did it like this, but I'm just gonna do, sorry for anybody that gets seasick because I'm scrolling through these kind of fast. I just took the time to highlight, wrong one, huh? The drug and drug, yeah, no, wrong. The drug and drug related offenses are not drug related. I did drugs and DWIs. And so for us in the substance use disorder field, you know, these kind of, we kind of, the people that work for us are usually people that have been involved with these kind of crimes. And so we want them to work for us once they've had some sobriety under their belt. And just looking at the ones that I've highlighted and eliminating kind of even first and second degree, because those ones are generally a little more serious. Where did my highlights go? Well, that's not great. Well, I did it anyways. And it ended up being about 3,000 disqualifications. It just highlighting 5th, 4th, and 3rd degree drugs and DWIs. It ended up adding up to about 3,000 disqualifications. And the one thing that I'm thinking about is the amount of work and how, because we're talking about, what I'm thinking about is how do we eliminate the set aside process for DHS? Because it's a holistic approach, right? We don't want it to just be easier for the employer and easier for the person applying, but also easier for DHS, right? And that means having it be a nice bright line for them to be able to say, okay, this group of individuals, we can not do any further work with, right? They're applying for a job that's in this particular field or whatever, and it's this crime and it was this long ago, so we can just approve these ones or whatever. And so those are the ones that I just kind of highlighted in everyone but permanent and 10-year bar going down 15, 10 and all that stuff. And just the direct drugs, except for 1 and 2 and the DWIs, it added up to 3,000 like reconsiderations that they wouldn't have had to do. And I don't know what 3,000 not having to do reconsiderations would look like for you all, Ms. Cassane, but it seems like a little bit of a chunk. So that was just something that I noticed in the numbers. So I'm going to stop sharing because it didn't really help anyways.
Ms. Cassane, I see your hand is up, please.
Thank you so much. I received a very helpful chat from Katie Ryan, who's in Background Studies Legal Department. So I'll read that to you. She said, admission disqualifications are based on guilty pleas with stays of adjudication or admissions in juvenile court without adjudication. So I hope that helps.
And Kelly, remind us what a stay of adjudication is. Does that mean it drops completely off afterwards or down to a misdemeanor?
Yeah, so a stay of adjudication means it goes away. If you complete your probation, then and everything's successful, then that there's no conviction that's entered. And I think the other thing you were saying, if it goes to a misdemeanor, that's if there's like a stay of imposition or stay of execution. So that I think there's lots of different stays.
And that's
helpful. That definition is really helpful. If the report's going to be revised with that other data you mentioned, it might be useful to have that definition put in the report too, please.
Yes. And yeah, when you go into the extended jurisdiction, that's where the stays kind of can look a little different. Adjudication, that's something that's been raised beforehand. Ms. Cassane, could you please repeat what you said about the definition? I really just want to make sure I'm clear on all that you said, because that was a lot.
Yes, thank you, Chair Williamson, I'm happy to. So it's admission disqualifications are based on guilty pleas with stays of adjudication or admissions in juvenile court without adjudication. If it would be helpful, I can put that in the chat so that nobody has to copy it down. I'd be happy to do that.
That'd be great. Mr. Vogel, if you like, if that would be helpful to you for the chat.
Madam Chair, I could in fact send out an email to the members with that text if Ms. Kassane could supply it.
And we will be adding that to the report when we do the other revisions. So
That's fantastic. Because I know, and I work with those considered to be juveniles, and I know that's a concern that's been raised in regards to disqualifications when you haven't legally been charged or convicted. So, yes. All right.
I know everyone's probably thinking of it, like how many people choose the stay of adjudication for the purpose of future employment, and then it really bears no impact because of this additional process. And they don't know that, right? It's almost like the small print that should be in there.
I could just jump in quick.
Please.
One of the other things that I brought up yesterday with Roy is that when it talks about your disqualification, that time frame does not start until after you are off probation. They do not consider your probation part of your rehabilitation. So even though it may say 7, 10, 15 years, you're on probation for 3, 5, 8 years, that disqualification is technically much longer than what it's indicated.
Very good point. Very good point to raise. Thank you. So, Ms. Please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, can I just circle back to something that Gina was talking about? And that's kind of what I was trying to raise with the theft issue too, because I'm wondering, theft isn't that uncommon for people who have substance use disorder. And so even if there's someone who doesn't have a 5th-degree controlled substance or another controlled substance offense, like that dishonored checks, the credit card fraud, the thefts, I was really curious how many of those might have been driven by substance use disorder. And that's not something necessarily that, DHS would have, but as you're thinking about the people that you want to be able to help others who are going through recovery, maybe even beyond the controlled substance offenses, those theft ones are something to consider.
Yeah, and that's what the last group did, the report and recommendation for the collateral sanctions committee, pulled out what would be considered like kind of drug and drug related crimes, including like false, things that are not like false information to law enforcement, and theft, stolen property, possession of stolen property. And I think, that could be something that this group kind of, like the data for that, to look at how many of these, how do we want to use that data? Because it's not for us to make the recommendations necessarily, but how do we use this data to say this many of these would be considered risk of harm, the risk of harm, compared to this many of these would be considered drug or drug related. How do we want to pose that data, I guess, would be the question I would ask.
Thank you. So how would we want to pose that? I think pulling up the notes that we had at our previous meeting, now would be a good time for that, Mr. Vogel, so that we can, to Vice Chair's point and other points that were raised in this meeting, we can revise that document to make sure we're reflecting all of these.
Apologies, I was muted. Certainly, Madam Chair, you should be able to see that on my screen now.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just note that these notes are similar to these are the notes that I was circulating a few weeks ago. And the main new items that have been added are a question about how Minnesota recidivism or essentially harm rates compared to other states. I know that was a discussion that Ms. Mattson was leading last meeting. I don't have any information on that right now, but that's something that the group was considering. And I know from some offline discussions with the members that some members were interested in essentially how much an average background study costs DHS, issues like that. But otherwise, here are those informal notes, and a copy will be available on the website to anybody watching this.
So is there a way, in regards to what Vice Chair just raised, what would be a good way to pose that? I don't know.
I would look to Representative Mueller. And I don't know if she had to pop off or something to think about, she's a county attorney in Hennepin County. And so when she pops back on, I would look to her to figure out maybe a good way to do that. The recommendations would later go to the legislature. And how do we do the best way to do that? So can we put a pin in that until she pops back on? Because I would love her to be involved in that part of the conversation.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think, and we also discussed in regards to just with the data requests. I know we're working with getting support from DHS in regards to requested data, and then also we were looking outside. So speaking of the county attorney's office, I do have a connection, looking to see about some additional data that maybe can be retrieved from that department in regards to the data that we're trying to gather for the purpose of this subcommittee. And I know we had talked about was it the Lutheran? I'm sorry. The
Lutheran Social Services. Yeah, they presented on Friday. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm just curious as to if we've heard back from them as far as just some data specifically that I had inquired. It wasn't more so data. I was asking about the fiscal amount for attrition.
Yeah, the one thing that I thought was really interesting from what they presented on Friday was that out of the 1,768 applications that they requested, they had 65 disqualifications, and they asked for 35 set-asides, and all 35 of their set-asides were granted. So just looking at that data, from them specifically, but also from DHS, that only 2.4% of set-asides that are, they 10,000 of them a year or whatever that they do, and only 2.4% of them are actually disqualified. It's a lot of work that they're doing to only filter out of 750,000 or whatever, and they're only filtering out 10% of them. It's a machine, and how do we be more efficient than that, right?
Or just standardize it so it's accepted and the person knows that they don't even need to go through that, and the employer knows.
Yep. And the fact that they did all of those on only 400, and I'm just pulling these out of the air, they'll be close, but they did 735,000 on only 460 unique individuals. Well, how many times do you have to run the same background check on a person in 2 years?
Well, that's something that, Madam Chair and Vice Chair, that our members have brought up quite often, is that reconsiderations can't follow a person. Which is really for one, the background study can't follow you either, which is also problematic and leads to delays. This is a highly mobile workforce that wants to have, opportunities. They want to be able to avail themselves of opportunities, especially in healthcare. These are shift-based workers that may work at multiple organizations. So the fact that it can't transition with you, I don't see the benefit of that to anyone.
Yep.
That actually would be a great point to add to our document here. Member Matson, how do you think we should word that?
As I understand it, background studies and reconsiderations are not transferable, which in a worker-driven economy is problematic. It leads to delays in hiring and opportunity costs for the employer. I don't know. And I thought the presentation from Lutheran Social Services was extraordinary, but I could also tell that they were an extraordinary employer, and that they had some wherewithal to manage this process and the benefit of their staff, because they were in tune with maybe community needs in addition to their staff needs. Not every employer is positioned like that. I think there's also an opportunity to teach employers how they can engage. People aren't disposable, right? If you take the time to hire someone, you want to be able to achieve that hire. And if there are best practices that we can learn from organizations like Lutheran Social Services, we should replicate that and scale that so that other not so well advantaged employers can take advantage of those steps, whatever they are. I mean, they were successful almost 100% of the time, or their employees were engaging in the process. So I want to keep putting that out there, because they seem to be an exceptional employer, not necessarily the rule. Healthcare employers are just really stretched very thin and have limited capacity, but they need staff desperately.
Thank you so much. With our screen share on, I'm not able to see if any hands are raised. So please, if you have something you want to say, please come off mute. Please speak free.
I just have a thought. And Gina and I sort of talked a little bit. I screwed up my screen so I can't see. In some of this, I feel like our group has really discussed a lot of the things that we are proposing. So even with this example, I 100% agree. I think having to do this every time you want to switch a job seems unreasonable. However, my guess is there's some why behind that practice. And so as we propose changes, I guess for me, it'd be helpful also to know the risks associated with that proposed change, right? So we understand that switching types of employment environment based on who the clientele they serve might be an obvious one, right? But as there are other things we're not thinking about, has there been things that have occurred to put these practices in place? I just think as we propose things to some of these changes, knowing the why and the risks associated would be helpful for me, because I certainly too, have my opinions and my thoughts about some of this that seems reasonable, but I'm certain I don't know the full background and history and haven't heard the other side of things where someone has been become a victim because something wasn't in place that should have been.
Thank you.
One of the things I always like to consider here, though, is for when we think back to the educational background study process, there was a precedent for educational background studies to follow the student if they went to multiple internship sites. So I doubt there's much data there, but it would be so interesting to see were there any problems, because if not, it might be a good model to just reflect on and say, if they could follow students who are doing internships or whatnot at different facilities, can we expand that out further? So
Just one other thing, if I can add from an employer perspective, another issue is the amount of time that it takes. And I think Lutheran Social Services spoke to that as well, but the investments are made from an orientation onboarding perspective, or even sometimes full employment. And then you get notification that they're disqualified, or another scenario where the person's background study is pending and it just pends for a considerable amount of time without the ability to bring them on with supervision. So you're not having them work, which is also a cost, especially for, again, healthcare employers who probably aren't in a position to provide direct supervision. Most don't do that. If the study comes back and says that the person needs direct supervision, most healthcare employers can't do that. So I just think that there's a quantifiable cost for employers for that as well.
So I think we should highlight the quantifiable cost. That should definitely be included. That's kind of going back to that, trying to get the fiscal amount. And like I said, even just to see.
Yeah, we're working on that. March 11th, New Way is coming with some data that they're hoping to get from March members about what that is costing to have staff, onboarded and interns onboarded. And then once the full background check comes back, what that's costing treatment providers to find out that people are disqualified then and having to let folks go, or they can work with supervision and then get disqualified. And so March is working on that cost to providers, just so you know, Madam Chair.
Yes, that's awesome.
And Madam Chair, if I may, long-term care, I do have some data from long-term care employers. I believe it's around $7,000 to $10,000 for onboarding costs per person, which you could, I don't know, maybe potentially use that to extrapolate something in our that data point line where it's got our particular setting.
That would be amazing. Mr. Vogel, would Member Mattson just email that to you, or would all the members want to see that? Or excuse me, email it to Mr. Vogel, and then we can have it where all of the members can view that as well. I think that would be very helpful.
Certainly, Madam Chair, I can forward that email as soon as Ms. Mattson sent it to me. And thank you in advance, Ms. Mattson. I'll also forward the email from Ms. Kassane after this meeting with that definition.
Yeah, that's great. And would that be helpful just in regards to, because I think, I know we talked about this as a subcommittee. I don't know that we really solidified. I know we wanted to see about DHS being able to prepare a presentation in regards to interpretation of the data and then how it's put into practice and things of such. I wonder, should we as a subcommittee look to prepare a presentation just in regards to data that we've received, whether from DHS or externally, in addition to the points of interest, or these are notes in regards to, or suggestions, I should say, just to kind of start the greater discussion with the full task force as far as recommendations. Is that something that so my question is, should we consider making a presentation from this subcommittee, just as a summary?
I think probably at some point, Tashonda, now that we're done with the March 1st report though, like I feel like now it's time we can get down to work without that looming March 1st report, and like digging through the data and figuring out like what do we know, and like now it's time to like roll up our sleeves and get down to the business of like figuring out what we know, and then we can worry about like presenting it out to folks, because I don't even know that I know what we know yet. So and a couple, if I could just make a couple points. Emily, is there a way that we can find out from DHS? Are you there, or did you have to take a call again? It's okay if you did. Awesome. Is there a way that we can find out from DHS some kind of like, it would just be good to know like, what is the cost, like manpower? And I know it's like $25 for you guys to find out outstate, like to pull in documents and all that stuff from outstate, what it cost like in dollars for DHS to pull other people's backgrounds from other states, but like in manpower and all that stuff, like what does it cost to do a background study and then go through the set aside process for one individual? Like, can you guys know that?
We can take down the screen share just to. Perfect.
Or if you guys could find that out, it would just know, like we're looking at I mean, it's not a fiscal note because we're not in the legislature, but it would just be good to know what is it costing me as a taxpayer to do all of these. Like there were, I don't know, 500 fifth degree possession set aside applications. Like that seems fruitless to me. And I would like to know what that cost me in 2019. Do you know what I mean? And so if we could find out an estimate maybe of what you all are, I would love to know what it cost.
But yeah, Chair Vinson, Vice Chair Vinson, Chair Williamson, I'd be happy to talk to them about that. For documents out of state, I know it varies widely. It does wildly and widely. And I'll see, I know I've seen it on that before, but I'll see what I can and pull on that as well.
And I know thank you so much, Ms. Kassane. And then I know we're getting to the end of our time, but Representative Mueller, like I would like to get back at some point to the conversation that we were having about, do we want to go through this list and figure out like, how do we categorize all of this stuff? Like there's the obvious stuff to pull out that are like, you know, dangerous crimes or crimes against people, or, you know, do we make a section of like drug related crimes and then direct drug crimes? So to get us really thinking about like, how do we categorize this stuff in a way that we can then put together some kind of presentation to then get to the larger group, to get back to Tashanda's point, to Madam Chair's point, to look at, because it's a fire hose, right? And so how do we get it so that Roy can take it then and make it into digestible, or I can. I'm not great at it. It'll take me 2 weeks, but I could also do it. But to make it like, here's the data that we have on stuff and get it, because I look at it and just can pull out the stuff that's important to me, but that's not all of it. So that we could be thinking about it, and then to know that we need to sell it later, and that's important as well.
Yeah. Well, I love Roy's graphs as well. And so I think some of the things that have the most common, obviously the higher numbers, are useful. And I think even for the future report, even including some of those graphs would be super helpful for the legislators, because we're quickly looking through things. We're not going to have time, you know, in the final report to look at every single table, even though everything will be included. So, but yeah, I mean, some of those things I don't really have an answer to how to group them. Like we were talking about the theft and the controlled substance. I don't have a good answer for that. I will say the information or the advice on tying this to employment, I thought was really good, because we are hearing in the Human Services Committee, almost every hearing we've had has been related to workforce shortages. And we also want government to be efficient. And if there are these, you know, the person constantly going for the background studies and it's not carrying through with them from job to job, potentially that's an inefficiency. And you know, whoever made the point of maybe there's a good reason for that and we don't know it and need to understand that too is well taken. But I think in the final report, if you can highlight how this impacts workforce shortage, any inefficiencies in government, and then just sort of like, sort of fairness kinds of things. I was thinking with the DWI numbers, is that DWI, those felony DWIs, relevant to all of the things someone's going to be disqualified for? They may not be at all relevant. If a person doesn't have to ever transport somebody in a car, maybe that's not relevant. So I think sort of, I guess those would be the three buckets of how I would like to see it when it comes back to the legislature. I don't know if that's helpful.
Mhm.
Can you repeat the three buckets?
Yeah.
Please?
Yep. I would say just fairness, the sort of highlighting any potential inefficiencies, and then how this can negatively impact workforce shortage, or how we could maybe better address workforce shortage issues if we remove some unnecessary barriers.
Thank you so much.
I have to go, you guys. Thank you. Happy Friday.
All right, thank you so much.
I have to leave as well. Thank you, and we'll be in contact.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
I think the other part of that too, just to add, the other additional thing is what Jolene was talking about, and that is making sure that we're looking at it from the other perspective, and that we need to, like, the reason these things are in place is to protect the public, and that we are bringing in, whatever data or other perspectives that there are, whether that is victim voices or law enforcement or whomever that is. And so
I think that's where the other state comparisons can help, because presumably people in other states are the same as we are here. And so if there's disproportionate impact, you know what I mean? If they have similar populations and aren't experiencing the same level of risk, but have a looser type of qualifier, it calls into question, are we really getting the value out of what we're doing?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I gotta go too. So,
and I
guys.
do, because we are definitely over time. Thank you so much, Member Madsen. Will, did you have any questions in regards to those notes?
Madam Chair, I suppose I do have the question of timing. Would the group like to continue this every other week meeting schedule with the next meeting at noon on the 18th of March?
I think just considering that we went over time, we will continue with that, and then make sure that we bring that up right earlier.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
No worries. It was a wonderful discussion. So, all right. If all minds are clear, so then Mr. Vogel, you'll send out our next calendar invite. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend, please. All right.